Hi everyone, my name is Justin Harrison and I'll be your instructor for critical thinking. I live in San Diego, California. I enjoy surfing. I'm originally from the Midwest. I'm from Indiana. Went to school in Indiana and then at University of Toledo, and then ended up in Chicago where I taught at a few colleges as I was doing my PhD in philosophy there. And then I came out to San Diego from Chicago. I've been here about 5 years. As I said, I like to surf. I really like music. I like to read a lot, hang out with friends. You know, just the typical stuff that everybody likes to do. In the class, I want to welcome you all to critical thinking. You'll learn a lot about critical thinking. There are a lot of different definitions of critical thinking. We'll be examining one idea about critical thinking from Paul and Elder. I want to encourage everybody to use your textbooks and your readings to guide pretty much everything that you do. If you're going out to other sources outside the class, a lot of times students use outside sources and they're not really relevant to the questions that are being asked because the questions are being asked from the perspective of the materials in the course. I also want to encourage students to think outside of grades. A lot of students define their level of aptitude and learning by their grades, but grades are not a direct measure of learning. People who get lower grades can learn way more than people who get better grades, who just memorize things. And so if you're focused more on the grade than what you're learning, I would just encourage you to shift that view to one where you focus on learning over whatever grade you get. If you're learning, that's all that matters. If you get A's and you don't remember anything that you learned, then you're basically just wasting thousands of dollars. But our education system is one that tends to reward students who get certain grades, unfortunately, rather than rewarding students who actually learn. So that's my perspective on grades. So I might be a different type of grader than you're used to. And then the final thing I would say is, this is a critical thinking class. So what do we do in critical thinking? In critical thinking, we evaluate evidence, we use evidence to support positions. And, most people in society tend to settle for very low levels of evidence for what they believe. They tend to support their claims with low levels of evidence. And I would just finally encourage all of you that as you're doing your research, avoid cable news networks. The news media is not an academic source anyway. So you shouldn't use the news media to support your beliefs from a critical thinking perspective, which I believe is the correct perspective. You can use the news to learn things about different things, but avoid really, polarized news sources. Use the best types of news sources. If you're interested in those, there's a lot of information out about obviously the best news sources are the ones who win the most, journalistic awards. The ones who have the highest respect within their own community, the ones that are at the cutting edge of what they're doing, and just avoid cable news in general. Whatever you're watching on cable news, just get rid of it, and go with other news sources. But then beyond that, I would encourage all of you, use the library, use academically published journal articles to support your claims. For example, in the week 4 assignment, you'll need to use academic evidence to support your claims. It's not enough just to make reference to anecdotal stories, individual stories. It's not enough to point to the news or that somebody on the radio said or something like that. You need to really get into the literature, read academically published books, those that are usually published by academic publishers or colleges like Indiana University Press, Oxford University Press, and then also journal articles. And then there are higher levels of news sources, for example, The Economist, or Slate, or some of these magazines that do these kind of more nuanced stories that provide a lot more information than what you're just going to get out on the web. And final thing, I would just encourage everybody to open your mind to other perspectives. Critical thinking is all about other perspectives and learning from other people and thinking about things from the perspective of others. And so right now, especially in our political climate, people are tending to hunker in, to cut out others, to try to create some sort of ideal that eliminates other perspectives. And I would just encourage you not to do that. That is just not a very smart thing to do in all aspects of life. To cut people out of conversations, for example, in critical thinking. But if you're a business major, let's say, one of the worst things you could do running a business is to cut out potential clients from being able to participate in your business, because then ultimately you're cutting down on profits, you're cutting down on potential for growth, you're cutting down on potential for hiring people. It's just not a smart move. Same thing goes for education, right? We excluded people based on color and based on gender, right? Women were excluded from higher education for, basically the entire history of the United States up until about, 50 years ago or so. And what did that do to our society? How many young women who could have gone to college, could have been scientists, could have been doctors, and not even scientists and doctors, right? We tend to valorize those people. But could have contributed to their own communities through their education. Not that women haven't been doing that, but when you cut out 50% of the population from participating in higher education, you're cutting out twice as many people that could participate. And if you look at societies where they do still exclude women, or they do exclude people based on ethnicity, you see areas where education in general is usually poor. The job market doesn't have the best people working because you're cutting out 50% of the people who could potentially do the jobs. So anyway, I kind of went off on a tangent here, but I think it's important because critical thinking is all about opening yourself up to the entire world of information, even the stuff especially the stuff that makes you feel uncomfortable, especially the stuff that goes against your own religious beliefs or your social beliefs. You must expose yourself to those things so that you can understand more of the truth. Because if we just shut out everything else that we don't agree with, then our truth is already funneled down to this little area. All of us have to funnel down our truth. We can't know all perspectives from all people. But again, in critical thinking, I would just encourage you to learn from each other, talk to each other. We're going to engage some difficult concepts and some big social issues. And I expect us to be open to each other and also to be using really good evidence to support our claims, and not just what we heard from this person or that person, or what we saw in the news, or we heard this one story where this one guy did this or that. We need to be going into academic evidence and looking at statistically significant data about things that relate to us and our society. So we're going to have a good class, and I look forward to working with all of you. And feel free to reach out to me with any questions that you have.